Alright, so we're melting chocolate for the purposes of tempering. And as you can see, I took some chocolate chips, got them melted. I temped them to 113 degrees. And these are the chocolate chips. Very simple chocolate chips, nothing real fancy. What you notice here is I take some chips out and I leave them on the side, reserving them for the tempering process. So I'm going to take some of these chips and I'm going to drop them into the chocolate, and we're going to stir these in. When we do, they're going to melt, and as they do, they're form 5 beta crystals that are in here will then teach the unmelted or the totally melted crystals that are in this melted chocolate to become beta crystals along with it. So let me give this a good stir and we'll be right back. Now those seed crystals we just put in there are starting to cause a chain reaction. So this chocolate, as it comes from the store, is already crystallized. Everything is tempered in the chip form. When we melt chocolate, we have to then go back to the beginning, and in order to get it to harden on its own at room temperature without the help of refrigeration, what we need is some seed crystals, and that's what we use these chips for. I just stirred these in. Let's go ahead and temp this chocolate. Okay, so we're at 100 degrees, 101, 102. We need to cool this chocolate down now. Now that I've added seed crystals, I'm going to have to cool it on down. It's going to have to cool down to about 86 degrees, 84 degrees. I want to get it down cool enough so that a rapid crystallization starts to take place in the form 5 crystals that are in the chips. They're going to start to cause a chain reaction in this melted chocolate. So I'm going to keep stirring and I'm going to cool it on down and keep adding more chips. I'll be right back. Okay, so continuing to stir and to try to cool down this chocolate. Stirring cools it down. The chips that I'm putting in are cooler than the chocolate, so they're cooling it down. So either way, but with both of these, with the seed chocolate I'm putting in and with stirring, we're rapidly cooling this down. And it is thick. This is made with chocolate chips. It's not made with a really high quality chocolate, but it is possible to temper it, and we know that because it comes from the factory in the tempered form. It comes hard. So we know that it can be tempered if under the right conditions. So the seeds I just put in there, you can still see a lump or two, just a small lump or two. When I add seed, I add quite a bit at the beginning, and then I start to taper off. Every time I add some more seed, I add a little less until I get to the end and I'm ready with the chocolate cooled down. I'm ready to test it to see if it's in temper, and by that time I have, if I'm adding any chips at all, it's just a tiny, tiny amount. The idea is that I don't want to end up with lumps in my chocolate. I just want to have a smooth chocolate. So let's temp this chocolate and see how it's doing. Okay, so we're at 90, 91. We're really cooling down quick. So that's good. And the chocolate's starting to thicken. You'll notice it's really getting thick. And that's because the cocoa butter in here is starting to crystallize. The seed is working. It's starting to cause that chain reaction. There are other ways you can temper chocolate. You can temper it directly on the surface of a piece of marble or on a table. You can also use what I call the ice method, where if you have some ice in a bowl, you can put this bowl of chocolate on a bowl of ice. The only problem with that is it's very, very harsh, and it causes the chocolate to harden up very, very quickly. So quickly that it may be too quickly for you to keep up with it. So I don't suggest using the ice method right away. That's for emergencies. Especially, I use the ice method especially in hot weather, like in August, when it's 95 degrees outside, it's 90% humidity, and the chocolate simply will not temper because the temperature in the room is too warm. I'll use ice to cool everything down. All right, so this is really starting to thicken up now. The thickness of it tells me a lot. That tells me that I'm really getting close to being in the proper state for the chocolate to be pre-crystallized. You'll notice I call it pre-crystallized. We used to always call it tempering, but the reality is tempering really leads us to think of the word temperature all the time. And temperature really isn't what crystallization is about. Temperature is just one aspect. What's really going on is we're causing crystals to form. So now we're down 86 degrees. 86 degrees is right about where I want to be. I know the crystallization is taking place. We're going to run a test and see how it's doing. And the way I'm going to do that is with a small spatula here, a small offset spatula. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a little bit of chocolate, put it on the spatula, and we're going to wait. This should harden. If it's in temper, it should harden within 3 to 5 minutes. It should harden on its own without any help, without any refrigeration. We should never have to, if the chocolate's in temper, we should never have to refrigerate the chocolate or cool it down manually. Of course, unless it's 95 degrees outside. So I'm going to set this here. We're going to come back and check on it in just a little bit. Okay, we're back, and I take a look at the chocolate I put on this spatula, and sure enough, it has darkened in color. It has gotten to be a soft sheen. That soft sheen is an indicator that the chocolate has hardened. If I touch it, of course, it is hard to the touch, and it has hardened on its own, which means the chocolate is in temper. When we know that, now we can start working with this chocolate. You don't dare work with it until you get a good test. When you get a good test, that tells you that the chocolate is ready to work. If you try working with it, you get over anxious and try working with it before it's ready, you might be just wasting your time and end up with a lot of chocolates that still have untempered chocolate on them, and they will never be able to harden properly at room temperature. So now this chocolate's in temper, and we know it's tempered properly. If the crystallization has taken place, this chocolate is definitely hard. We're going to go ahead and warm it slightly on the warm water. I have a pot of water over here, and we're going to warm it to bring it up to working temperature. Now, working temperature, what is that? Well, working temperature is about 88 degrees. So we're not going to bring it up a lot. We're just going to bring it up a little bit. 88 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe 90 at the very, very most. But that will just make the chocolate a slight bit more fluid, a little bit easier to work with than it would be at 86. 86 is pretty thick. Now, we don't want it to be too thick. If we try to, let's say, coat our truffles with chocolate that's this thick, we're going to end up with a chocolate layer on the outside of the truffles that's just way too thick, hard to bite through. Whereas if it's a little more fluid, it'll be a little bit easier to work with. You'll have a thinner, more delicate layer of chocolate around your truffles, and that's really much more desirable. So as I stir it here over a pot of warm water, I always keep a towel here nearby just to make sure that I can easily dry off the bottom of my bowl, because water will very easily find its way into the bowl if we're not careful. So dry off the bottom. Let's temp it. Okay, so now we're getting up right around 90 degrees. And that's about right. We're not going to try to go any warmer than that. Give it a good stir. It's this vigorous stirring that really helps to knock out any lumps too. I think that's really important. We don't want to have too many lumps in our chocolate. That'll just cause more problems down the road. All right, so we're going to run another quick test just to be sure this chocolate is really ready to go. So we'll check it in a moment.